Hello, welcome to my winter reading wrap-up, where I'm going to tell you all about the books that I've read so far this year in the months of January and February. These first 4/5 books I talked about in my 24-hour reading challenge reading vlog. So if you want more details about these 5 books, go check out that reading vlog. Okay? First book that I read this year was Stardust by Neil Gaiman. This is a fantasy adventure romance about a young man who lives in a village called Wall. It is next to a wall, and on the other side of the wall is this magical fairy world. He crosses the wall and goes on this adventure to find a fallen star. I loved this book. It's got some adventure to it, it's got some magic to it, it's got some romance to it, and it was so good. I read this book because I like the movie. This book was a lot cozier than the movie. The stakes felt a little bit lower, and so it was different. It had a different vibe than the movie, but somehow it just felt more comforting. It felt a little bit more magical. It felt a little bit more like your parents reading you a bedtime story. That's what this book felt like, and I loved it. Second book was You Are a Badass, and this is motivational, inspirational, self-help nonfiction that's encouraging you to chase your dreams because you are a badass and you can do anything you set your mind to. I read this because it was the new year. Felt like the right thing to do. This is a great book. It does exactly what you expect it to. It motivates you to go live the life you want to live. In the aforementioned reading blog, I did also mention The Alchemist, and The Alchemist is a book. It's about a young man who is told that he will find a treasure if he goes to the Egyptian pyramids. And so he goes on this journey from Spain across northern Africa to Egypt to find this treasure that he's been told he's going to find. It's got the same kind of theme as You Are a Badass, that, if you know what you want to do with your life, don't let anything stop you. If you have a dream, if you have a purpose, go after that. I personally liked The Alchemist better than You Are a Badass. I feel like I just like the way that that idea is presented better when it's presented in like an allegorical story rather than just nonfiction. I don't know, I just like a story, okay? The next book I read is called What the River Knows. This is a historical fiction, magical realism, adventure romance that takes place in Egypt. And it is about a young woman whose parents are archaeologists, ? And during one of their trips to Egypt, they go missing. So she goes to Egypt herself to see what's going on, to see if she can find them, and find some treasure along the way, find some love along the way. It's a fun one. There was lots of twists and turns. I was having so much fun. I absolutely loved reading this book. It was such a fun time. Highly recommend. And in this book, Cleopatra is kind of a big deal. If you read this book and you want to learn more about who Cleopatra actually was, there's a mini docu-series on Netflix called Queen Cleopatra that I watched after I read this book. I really enjoyed watching that after reading this. I would recommend that. Moving on, I read The Princess Bride. It's just like the movie. If you've never seen the movie, let me summarize the movie and the book for you. A boy and a girl fall in love. The boy goes off to sea, gets lost at sea. The girl thinks he's dead and gets engaged to a prince. And then the boy, turns out he isn't dead. He fights to get his girl back. And that's what this book, this story is about. It's like a fairy tale romance adventure comedy story. And here's my take. Just watch the movie. There were so many parts of this book where it was like word for word exactly like the movie. I was wondering, why am I even reading this right now? I should just go turn on the movie. And so yeah, just watch the movie. The movie's better. The movie's better. The next book I read is called The Tao of Pooh. This is an introduction to the principles of Taoism. To explain these principles, they use examples from the Winnie the Pooh stories. I really enjoyed reading this. It's very cute, very comforting, and just a really good reminder to don't take things too seriously, calm down, go with the flow a little bit more, things like that. Reminders that I need. Reminders that I think we all need. So yeah, if you feel like you need some of those reminders right now, you should definitely read The Tao of Pooh. All right, these next 3 books that I'm going to talk about are in yet another reading vlog. So if you want more details about these next 3 books, check out the reading vlog that's coming out next week, okay? First book in this section is The Song of Achilles. This is a retelling of the Greek myth about Patroclus and Achilles. And surprise, spoilers if you didn't know this already, but Patroclus and Achilles are gay. They are lovers. They are in love. And so I went into this book expecting this beautiful, lovely, gorgeous romance, or not even romance, just a love story. I wanted to see their love grow, see how they like showed each other their love for each other, and I didn't get what I expected and was disappointed by that, honestly. Madeline Miller is a great author, and I feel like she does have a way with words. There were passages in this book where I was just like, wow, that is gorgeous. I can see it, like the way she's describing this is very poetic. Her writing is lovely, but it was not for me. More details in the reading vlog. The next book is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. This is a literary fiction about 2 friends who are friends from childhood all through adulthood. They bond over video games as children, and then as adults they develop their own video games and start a company. I read this for this reading vlog where I'm reading like very popular, hyped up books, and it is 100% worth the hype in my opinion. I am wary, typically very wary of literary fiction because I feel like sometimes there's just not enough plot for me to be engaged. I just need stuff to be happening, you know? If I'm too inside of a person's head, I get lost. My eyes glaze over. I get distracted. And that did not happen with this book. I was engaged the whole time. I loved the characters and I loved seeing their friendship grow and strengthen and then be challenged by circumstances and then get strengthened again. It was gorgeous. I loved it. The third book in this section is Fourth Wing. This book is a YA fantasy about a girl who goes to this elite war college where people learn to ride dragons. And it's a very cutthroat program. And when I say cutthroat, like they literally will like cut each other's throats to try and get through this program. She's at this academy trying to learn how to ride dragons. This book was a really great escape. Things in my life have been kind of crazy the last couple of weeks. To be in an entirely different world for a little while each night before I went to bed was just what I needed. I loved the dragons. That was definitely my favorite part. I think their personalities were so fun to see. So I would recommend this to anybody who likes YA fantasies and dragons. And if you like a bad boy and you want a bad boy romance, this book is for you. The next book is The Marriage Portrait. This is a historical fiction based on the life of a real person. This real person's name is Lucrezia Medici. She was a part of the Medici family from Florence, Italy. She was married at the age of 14 and very suddenly died a year later. And so this is about her, who she might have been, and what may have led to her death. I was really liking this. The first half of this book, I was really liking it. I feel like the way this was written, like there's a lot to it. There's lots of like foreshadowing and metaphors and all of those things you learn in like English classes or whatever. And so like reading it and like seeing all of these little hints and picking up on all these little things, I just really enjoyed that. But that does require brain power, some mental energy. By the time I reached like the halfway point, there's some stressful stuff happening in my life where I didn't have the mental energy to dedicate to reading this book. So the second half of the book, I didn't appreciate it as much and I felt like I was missing out on something. I would totally recommend this if you like historical fiction, especially if it's centered around like a strong female character, but just know that like you need the mental energy to really fully appreciate this book. After that, I listened to The Hobbit. This is the prequel to the Lord of the Rings series, and so it's about a hobbit named Bilbo Baggins. He goes on an adventure, a journey with Gandalf the Wizard and 13 dwarves to go and get the dwarves' home and all of their treasure back from this dragon. And along the way, he finds the ring from Lord of the Rings. This is a fantasy. If that wasn't clear, this is a fantasy, and I just have to say it was magical. I loved this. I had to read this when I was in high school, and I don't know what it was. Maybe I was just being a snarky, grumpy teenager, but I didn't like it. in high school. Reading it now, I'm just like, what was wrong with me back then? This is such a good book. This is so fun. This is so magical. I don't know what else to say about it. It really was just magical. I felt like I was there, like going on this journey with the Hobbit, with Bilbo, with the dwarves, and I loved that. The audiobook I listened to is narrated by Andy Serkis, who plays Gollum in the Lord of the Rings movies. He does not read it as Gollum, luckily, but he does do really well with all of the voices. Like, there's a different voice for each character. I feel like that definitely contributed to the magicalness of this experience of reading it this time through. And I learned that Andy Serkis also has narrated all 3 of the Lord of the Rings books. And up until now, I've always thought, the Lord of the Rings is too high fantasy for me. It is too much. I don't think I could ever handle it. No, too much for me. But considering how much I just enjoyed The Hobbit, I'm now considering reading Lord of the Rings this year. If you've read Lord of the Rings before, let me know down in the comments. Tell me, should I read Lord of the Rings this year? The very last book that I have to talk about is Percy Jackson, The Chalice of the Gods. It's a new series of centered around Percy Jackson. It's going to be a trilogy, but in this first book of this new trilogy, Percy and Annabeth and Grover have to find the stolen Chalice of the Gods and return it to the gods. Why, you might be asking? Because Percy needs a letter of recommendation to get into college. And that is part of what I loved about this book. I loved that, with this quest that they're going on, it's not to save the world. It's just so Percy can get into college. It just felt a lot more calm, a lot more chill, and that was comforting to me. That was very comforting to me to read this book with these characters that I already know and I love, but to see them go on this quest that's almost for fun. It's not for fun, but it's not as stressful as the other quests I've seen them go on. And so it was just very comforting. Again, my life has been kind of crazy. I got let go a couple weeks ago, and so I've been dealing with a lot of stress, so to read this book was just perfect. It was the perfect combination of just it's familiar, the stakes aren't too high, they're high, but not too high. It's magical, it has a happy ending. It was just the perfect combination. Exactly what I needed to be reading right now. And while we're talking about Percy Jackson, I do really quickly want to share my thoughts on the TV series with you. In short, I have very mixed feelings. There are some things I loved, and there are some things I really did not love. To quickly list off all these things. Things I didn't love. The trio knew all of the obstacles before they even got to the obstacle. Does that make sense? So there was no suspense. There's absolutely no suspense. Second thing, there was no action. Whenever there was action, and things started to get exciting, this scene was cut. It was okay, and it's over as soon as it gets exciting. And it's wait, what? No. Third, there wasn't enough humor. Percy Jackson is a funny character. He's a funny kid. He has a joke. He has a comeback for everything. That's why I fell in love with him when I was 12 years old. I wanted more of that humor in this show. To end on a happier note, here are all the things I loved about the show, okay? First thing, episode 5. Loved it. Perfect. Loved it. Something I loved about episode 5 is that they bring in the theme of Percy breaking the cycle of the gods being neglectful parents. They bring that theme right into this season, because in the book series that is a big theme, but I feel it doesn't really start to present itself until book 2 or 3. So I like that they brought that in sooner. And then the last thing that I loved was the trio. I think they had good chemistry. I thought they were all really cute together. The little promise they make to each other at the end of the show to come back to Camp Half-Blood next year, see you next year. That was so cute, and felt all the warm fuzzies, and I can't wait for next year or whenever the next season comes out. So those are my thoughts on Percy Jackson, the show, Percy Jackson, the book, and all of the other books that I have read in the last 2 months. If you are interested in reading any of these books for yourselves, I have links to every single one of these books listed down in the description box for this video. If you want to hear more details about the first 4 books that I mentioned, Stardust, You Are a Badass, What the River Knows, and The Princess Bride, you can watch this video up here. And if you want to know more of my thoughts about The Song of Achilles, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, and Fourth Wing, you can hear more of my thoughts in this video right here. With all of that said, thank you so much for watching this video, and thank you for listening to me ramble about books. I will see you in my next one. Bye.